My name is Nora. From the moment I was born in Springfield, Missouri, I knew I was never the chosen one. My twin sister Lily was the sun, and I was the shadow forever cast behind her. Even on the day we entered the world, the moment our cries filled the sterile hospital air, my mother laughed and said, "Lily cried first, so I knew she was the stronger one." That seemingly innocent sentence, so full of pride and laughter, set the stage for a lifetime of neglect. Lily had a room that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Lavender walls, lace curtains, a white wooden bed, and a closet bursting with new dresses. Me, I had the basement. I slept there every night, the stairs groaning beneath my feet, reminding me with every step that this was not my place. The basement wasn't even a room. It was a cold, damp storage space. The walls had started to peel from the moisture, the ceiling low enough to make me hunch over, and the air smelled like old dust and forgotten years. It was a place to be forgotten in. A place where if you listened carefully, you could hear the faintest echoes of your own heartbeat pounding in protest. Our parents never had a family photo where I stood at the center. On our 10th birthday, while Lily was surrounded by balloons and cake, I stood by the fence, a slice of cake in my hand, its edges too small, too dry to be satisfying. I heard someone ask, almost like an afterthought, "What about that other girl?" Mom chuckled. "Oh, that's Nora. She's quiet, not into all this noise." No one ever bothered to ask what I liked, what my interests were. I was a shadow, always hovering in the periphery. I studied hard, always at the top of my class, but when I brought home my first district math award, I rushed to show it to Dad. He barely glanced at it. "Yeah, okay," he said. "But you should learn more from Lily. She's outgoing, bubbly. That's the kind of personality people want." I clenched the certificate so tightly that the edges dug into my palm, my knuckles turning white. Lily joined every club, cheerleading, theater, photography. Our parents went to every event, sitting proudly in the front row. Me, I was always the one cleaning up afterward, the invisible hand that made everything run smoothly without anyone noticing. Lily got new clothes every holiday, a gown for winter balls, sweaters for Thanksgiving, new Nike sneakers at the start of each school year. I got old t-shirts from a cousin in Nebraska. Their collars stretched out their logos unfamiliar to me. I asked my mom once why I couldn't have new jeans like Lily. Her answer was blunt. "You don't need them. It's not like you go out much." It was clear Lily was the princess, and I was the afterthought, the part they hadn't planned for. I overheard my mom say it when I was 9, hiding behind the living room door. "Nora's just the extra part we didn't plan for." I gripped the doorframe so tightly, my fingers turning white. I didn't cry, though I had learned by then that tears never changed anything. Every evening, I ate quickly, washed the dishes, and retreated to the basement as soon as I could. It wasn't because I didn't want to be around my family. It was because every moment spent upstairs reminded me of a table I was never invited to. I remember asking my mom once, my voice barely a whisper, "Did I do something wrong?" She didn't even look at me when she replied, "Don't ask questions that make people uncomfortable." Nora. I understood then. In this house, my very existence was an inconvenience, so I learned not to bother anyone. Even when my heart screamed for affection, I learned to silence it. At 16, I woke up on a cold September morning, the autumn wind creeping through the cracks of my basement. I didn't expect anything. No cake, no greetings. But I didn't know that this would be the day my mother would finally push me out of the home I had spent 16 years in. I was folding my blanket when I heard hurried footsteps above. Then my mother's voice, oddly cheerful, called out, "Nora, come up here." I climbed the stairs, confused, only to see Lily standing in the dining room, spinning in circles, holding her stomach, and laughing. "It's really a baby," she shouted. My parents stood beside her, glowing their eyes wide with the thrill of new life. They looked as though they had won the lottery. And then my mother turned to me and said, almost matter-of-factly, "She's pregnant. We're going to be grandparents." I didn't know how to react. I just stood there, frozen, my eyes darting between Lily and my parents. My twin sister, 16, about to become a mother. 3 weeks later, my life was about to change in a way I couldn't have anticipated. That night, I came home from my shift at the convenience store, still holding my cup of instant noodles, only to find my mother sitting in the living room, her expression uncharacteristically serious. She patted the seat beside her. "Nora," she began, "we've talked it over. With Lily's situation, we need to make room for the baby." I nodded, unsure where this was going. "Your basement room isn't suitable. We'll move Lily and the baby down there. It's quiet and draft-free." "You'll need to give up the upstairs bedroom." I froze. I was already in the basement. She spoke as if this were completely normal. "You'll have to move out," she said. "We need the whole house for Lily's new family." I laughed dryly, thinking she was joking, but her face was stone cold. "You're 16 now," she continued. "It's time for you to learn independence. Lots of teens your age work and rent their own places, and just like that, without ceremony or explanation, I was no longer welcome in my own home. The house I had grown up in, the house that had never truly been mine. "I believe you can do it," my mother said, her voice too steady, too rehearsed. The words hung in the air, empty like a script she had rehearsed, but had no real meaning behind. "I have nowhere to go," I whispered back, barely audible. My dad from the kitchen chimed in as if this was all a casual decision. "We still have that camping tent from last year's trip." The words were final. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The decision was made, and the room grew colder, not from the outside wind, but from the chill of their indifference. That night, with only one suitcase in hand, I dragged it out to the backyard and set up the tent. The dry grass crunched underfoot as I drove the pegs into the ground, the sound echoing in the silence. The wind howled through the trees as if it, too, wanted to protest this injustice. The ground was hard, and the air bit at my skin like 1,000 needles. Dew seeped through the thin fabric of the tent, and I curled up in my sleeping bag, holding it tightly, as if it could shield me from the world. From inside the tent, I could still hear Lily's laughter drifting from the open upstairs window. My parents, oblivious to my existence, doted on her, taking her to doctor's appointments, decorating the nursery with pale yellow wallpaper, and buying a shiny new crib. Everything was about her as always. And I ate instant noodles under the pale light of a flashlight, studying late into the night, pretending the ache in my chest wasn't there. School didn't stop. I went every day, but I stopped bringing lunch. During breaks, I would head straight to the library, using the microwave to heat up canned soup from the discount store. At night, I worked at a bakery 3 blocks from home, washing trays, mopping floors, packing pastries. Anything for a few extra dollars and leftover bread. No one asked how I was doing out there. No one asked if I was cold or hungry. The emptiness in the house mirrored the emptiness in my soul. But there was one person who saw Mr. Dwight, the bakery owner, handed me a thick, worn-out coat one evening. "Snow's coming," he said, his voice devoid of pity, but his eyes. His eyes were red, tired. I knew the look. I knew what it meant. I started saving every tip, every $5 bill. I tucked them into a shoebox, hidden beneath my sleeping bag, each one adding to a growing sense of resolve. I didn't know where I'd go or when I'd have enough, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to stay in that tent forever. I wasn't going to be forgotten. I remember that morning as if it were yesterday. The temperature had dropped near freezing, and my hands were so numb I could barely press the microwave button at the library. I sat by the window, watching the last leaves fall, the wind slipping through the torn collar of my jacket. I nearly broke down right there, but I wouldn't let myself cry. Tears freeze faster than you think when no one's looking. After school, I dragged my feet past a bakery on the corner of Maple and 4th. The smell of warm bread and melting butter wafted through the thick glass, making my stomach growl violently. I stood there, hands deep in my pockets, just staring, trying to ignore the hollow ache in my chest. "Can I help you?" a voice called out, snapping me from my thoughts. I jumped, startled. A middle-aged man stood in the doorway of the bakery, hands on hips, wearing a flour-dusted apron. He looked at me, not with pity, not with annoyance, but plainly like he'd seen 100 kids standing in that very spot before. "Hi, I'm looking for a part-time job," I said, my voice soft but firm. He nodded slowly, sizing me up. "Name's Walter. I need someone to wash trays and pack up leftover goods at the end of the day. Doesn't pay much, but I'll cover dinner. Can you handle that?" I nodded so fast, my knit hat nearly slipped off. That night, I scrubbed flour-crusted pans, boxed up leftover pastries, swept the floors, wiped the windows, and stacked paper bags. The work wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Mr. Walter didn't say much, but he handed me a heavy paper bag before I left a loaf of sandwich bread, 2 croissants, and a bottle of apple juice. "Eat it now. Don't save it. Bread's best when it's warm." I sat on the back steps of the bakery, feeling my stomach truly full for the first time in weeks. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel invisible. I worked every evening without fail, arriving at 5 o'clock sharp, never missing a shift. Slowly, Mr. Walter began to open up. He told me about the bakery's old oven, passed down from his father. He told me how he once went bankrupt because he trusted the wrong friend, and how he never threw away edible bread because he'd once lived in a truck for a long time. One evening, as I was packing loaves into paper bags, Mr. Walter asked, "Nora, where are you staying?" I hesitated, the question catching me off guard, but I spoke quietly, as if confessing a shame. "I live in a tent in my parents' backyard." He went quiet for a moment, and then in a tone I couldn't quite place, he said, "That's not okay. It's freezing out there." He didn't ask again. 2 days later, after closing up, he handed me a small key. "There's a room upstairs. It used to be storage, but now it's just got a few empty boxes. If you want, you can sleep there. It's not much, but it has heat and electricity." I froze. My heart pounded, the weight of his words heavy in the air. I didn't know what to say, so I simply bowed my head. "I'll keep it clean, I promise." The room was small, barely enough space for an old mattress and a chipped wooden desk. But compared to the cold, hard ground of the backyard tent, it was heaven. The heat from the old radiator in the corner was a luxury I hadn't known in years. From that day on, my life fell into a new rhythm. School in the mornings, the bakery in the afternoons, homework at night, in the tiny attic room above Sunrise Oven. I started to track my income, dividing it into small envelopes, food savings emergencies. Walter, my quiet mentor, taught me that money wasn't salvation. It wasn't the enemy either. Money's a tool, Nora. Use it right, and you protect yourself. He never gave me praise or pat me on the back. But every time I wrapped a loaf of bread, neatly wiped down the tables, or balanced the books just so he'd give a small nod. That small nod, that's all I needed. It made me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't invisible anymore. I saved every dollar used coupons and picked up day-old goods from the discount store. In the evenings, I shoveled snow for the nail salon down the street, or helped stock shelves at the corner grocery store. I was no longer the lost girl hiding behind a house. I was rewriting my story page by page. I knew this was just the first chapter. By the time I turned 21, I bought my first house. It wasn't grand or elegant, nothing like the homes I used to cut out of old magazines. No wide porch, no white fence, no rose garden. But to me, it was a dream come true. A single-story brick house in Claremont, Delaware, with 2 bedrooms, a small living room, and a front yard just big enough for a few pots of yellow chrysanthemums. I remember holding the keys for the first time. My hand trembled as I slid the key into the lock, the door creaking open to the scent of old wood and sun-drenched dust. I stepped inside, overwhelmed by the strange mixture of freedom and fear. No more pounding on the door from my mother. No more cold stares from my father. No more Lily's laughter echoing from across the hallway. It was just me and this quiet space. Every scratch on the window pane, every chipped brick on the front step, each imperfection was a reminder that I had made it on my own. I didn't need much. Just enough to live, and for the first time in my life, I knew no one could take this away from me. I still worked at Sunrise Oven every morning, and in the evenings, I spent my time fixing up the house, replacing leaky pipes, repainting walls, building bookshelves. I learned from tutorials online, and sometimes I had help from neighbors like Martha, the elderly woman who brought over baked goods and stories from her youth, or Theo, a college student who lived with his stepmom and helped me move heavy furniture. But I never invited anyone inside. That house was sacred, a testament to everything I had endured and overcome. One late May evening, as I sat on the front steps sipping iced tea watching the sunset, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering Nora. "It's Mom," the voice on the other end said, and my heart skipped. I said nothing. "We heard you bought a house," she continued, her tone light as a breeze. "We should see each other. What do you think? Your father and Lily are happy for you too." I could hear Lily's laughter in the background, as cheerful as ever, but it didn't make my chest tighten like it used to. "I'm busy," I replied. My voice sharp, final, I added almost as an afterthought. "I just want you to know, no matter what, you're still part of the family." Family. The word almost made me laugh. The word meant nothing now. I hung up without another word, sitting there in the golden light of the porch, feeling the warmth of the evening sun on my face. I realized something in that moment. I was no longer the trembling girl in a tent staring through a window at someone else's dinner. I had my own kitchen, my own bed, and most importantly, my own voice. I had made my own way, and no one, not my mother, not my father, not even Lily, could ever take that from me. It was then that I heard the screech of brakes outside the gate. I looked up and saw the familiar silver SUV parked at the curb. For a moment, my chest tightened. The air around me thickened heavy with the weight of what was coming. My father stepped out first, more gray-haired than I remembered. But his eyes, those cold, proud eyes, were still the same. Behind him, my mother emerged, holding a canvas bag and wearing a smile I'd never seen directed at me. Then Sarah followed her youngest in tow, trailing two other kids who dashed across my lawn as if they owned the place. And finally, a strange man. Sarah's husband, I assumed, stepped out last, surveying the house like it was some investment he was mentally calculating. I turned off the mower, wiped my hands on my jeans, and watched them approach. My heart was racing, but I held my ground. "They didn't belong here." "Laura," my mother chirped, trying to sound casual. "We just dropped by out of the blue." "Hope you don't mind." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. Then slowly I turned my gaze to my father. "We heard you have your own place now," he said, crossing his arms. "We're all proud. Our little girl's grown up." I swallowed the knot in my throat, keeping my voice steady. "What do you mean?" "Lily's having a hard time," my mother blurted quickly. "Her place is too small, and she's pregnant with her fourth. We lost our retirement checks and can't afford the old apartment, so we thought maybe it's time the family came together. Lived under one roof, supported each other like a real family. I didn't laugh out loud, but a dry little chuckle escaped my lips. I repeated almost to myself. The last time we were together, you threw me out to make space for Lily. I slept in a tent in the snow while you all had dinner and threw her a baby shower. That's your idea of support. Don't dwell on the past. Mom snapped softly, trying to hold her composure. Every family makes mistakes, but now you have a house and stability. We just want to live with you and start over. No, I said, clearly cutting through her speech like a knife. I don't owe any of you. And this house isn't a hotel. Sarah stepped forward, her frown deepening. Nora, that's selfish. I'm your sister. My kids need a stable home. Don't you care at all? I met her gaze head on, unflinching. When I was 16 and shivering in that tent, did you ever ask if I was cold or hungry? Or were you too busy showing off your new crib in what used to be my room? Her husband piped up, his voice thick with false politeness. Hey, no need to be harsh. We won't stay long. Just a few months. I turned to him, my voice a quiet ice. Who are you, Ken? Sarah's husband, he said, offering his hand with a forced smile. I'm sure we can work something out. I didn't shake his hand. There's nothing to work out. The air between us grew heavy. Silence fell. My mom's smile was forced, a tug of desperation pulling at her shirt. Nora, we're blood. How long do you think you can live alone in this house? You'll get lonely. And when you do, family is all you'll have left. I stood there, the weight of her words crashing down on me like a wave. I remembered everything, the nights I spent on the cold ground, the sound of the door locking behind me, Lily's laughter echoing from the room. I was no longer allowed in. I used to believe that family was everything. But now I knew better. Family isn't who gives birth to you, I said. My voice calm, steady. It's who doesn't leave you out in the cold. I opened the gate, stepping aside, and pointed to the road. Get off my property. From now on, this is the boundary. Sarah flushed her face, reddening. My mother froze, shocked. My father took a step back, as if he couldn't believe I'd dared to say it. You'll regret this, Nora. My mother hissed, the venom in her words barely contained. You can't deny your blood forever. Blood doesn't grant you access to my home, I replied. My tone final, unyielding, and slammed the gate shut. I stood there still for a long time, listening as the engine started and slowly faded into the distance. My heart pounded in my chest, my hands still shaking, but there was a strange sense of relief, too. I was free for the first time from them, from their expectations, from the weight of their love that had always felt like a burden. 2 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived at my address. The return address was from a law office. My parents had filed a lawsuit demanding shared ownership of the house I lived in. They claimed that the family property was purchased with shared funds and contributions from multiple members. I read the letter over and over again, each word cutting deeper like a dull blade, scraping against my soul. This house it came from, every hour I spent baking, before the sun rose, every dollar I saved, every tray I scrubbed, every floor. I mopped every night spent in the cold attic, dreaming of a place to call my own. And now they dared to say it belonged to the family. I didn't freeze, didn't cry like I used to. I picked up the phone and called the law office. Walter had recommended the one that had helped him with a contract dispute years ago. The attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Niece Warner, listened as I explained the situation. After reviewing the case, she frowned. They won't go down easy, but if you can prove you paid for this house independently, we can flip this case. And just like that, the battle began. I nodded, the weight of the paperwork heavy in my hands. I've kept everything I said quietly. Pay stubs, transfer receipts, savings, logs, even the bank's loan approval email. Denise leaned back in her chair, her eyes lighting up with a spark of understanding. "Good," she said. "But there's one more thing I want to check your grandfather's estate. If he's the only one who ever truly cared about you, there's a chance he left something in your name." I stayed silent for a moment, uncertainty creeping in. "No one's ever told me anything about that." Denise shrugged, her expression firm. "Then we'll find out." 3 weeks later, she called me into her office and placed a thick file on the desk. "Sit tight," she said, her tone completely serious. "According to the legal documents, your grandfather left you a savings account of over $60,000. My breath caught. She continued. "It was clearly stated in his will to be transferred only when you turned 18, but within a year of his passing, all of it had been withdrawn. The authorized signature. Your mother's." I sat frozen, staring at the file in front of me, feeling the weight of her words. Denise's voice remained steady as she laid out the details. "The entire amount was moved into a joint account under your parents' names. From there, it was gradually used to pay off their mortgage fund. Sarah's wedding and support, Ken's startup, your sister's husband." I went numb. "Oh," I whispered, the sound barely escaping my lips. "They let me sleep in a tent while spending the money my grandfather left for me." Denise nodded slowly, her expression unwavering. "They embezzled your inheritance," and then she slid a new document across the desk. "Here's the important part. Your grandfather explicitly wrote in his will that you should not be financially dependent on your parents if they failed to legally care for you." He saw this coming. It wasn't rage that washed over me. It was emptiness, the kind that comes when you realize the people who once called themselves family could be so calculated, so cold. I whispered, my voice rough. "Can we sue them?" Denise didn't answer immediately. She just slid a civil suit document across the table. "This is for inheritance theft and will fraud. If you're ready to fight, I'll go all the way with you." Without a second thought, I signed. The case was filed with the county court a week later. I knew the papers had arrived when Lily, the only cousin who still spoke to me, sent a short message. "Mom's panicking, Dad's calling every lawyer he knows." I didn't reply. What followed was a full-on legal storm. My family tried everything to smear my name. They called me poor, greedy, ungrateful, making things up to take what wasn't mine. But for every lie they spread, Denise countered with a stack of proof bank statements, mortgage documents, handwritten notes from my grandfather. Even a photo of me curled up in that backyard tent, taken by a former neighbor who'd once considered calling child services. The final hearing took place on a cloudy Monday morning in a modest courtroom in Newcastle County. I wore the white button-up shirt Walter had bought me when I landed my first job at the bakery. It was a quiet reminder that I wasn't walking into this battle alone. My parents sat across from me, tense, avoiding eye contact. Sarah wasn't there, but their lawyer, a silver-haired man with polished words, sat beside Denise, gripping my file. His attempts to justify the unjustifiable were like smoke in the air. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I had survived winter in a tent I had climbed from the cold bakery floors to home ownership. No one here could shake me. When the judge finally spoke, the room fell silent, time seeming to freeze in the stillness. After full review of the evidence, including the original will financial transaction records and related testimonies, the court orders the defendants, Mr. and Mrs. Patrick and Margaret Callahan, to repay the full inheritance amount of $63,000 to the plaintiff, along with $18,000 in damages. My father lowered his head. My mother opened her mouth as if to protest, but no words came. And from this point forward, the judge continued. The defendants have no legal claim to the plaintiff's current property. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. I took a deep breath, letting the cold courtroom air wash over every old wound. It was finally over. I was free. Denise gave my shoulder a gentle tap. "You did it, Nora." I nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of my lips. It wasn't because I won. It was because for the first time in my life, I felt free. In the days that followed, the calls poured in, some from my mom, a few from Sarah, and most surprisingly, a short message from my father. "Can we talk?" I read it, then deleted it. No reply. I knew what talking with them meant. It was always a monologue where they were right and I was the problem. I no longer felt the need to apologize for existing. I no longer needed approval from people who never saw me as a daughter, a sister, or even a person. I blocked all their numbers, changed my email, and for the first time, I wrote a letter to myself. In it, I wrote, "You're not the extra piece. You're the gift that was misplaced." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my grandfather's old wooden box, the one that held the only keepsakes I still owned. That letter wasn't meant to be read again. It was simply the final punctuation to a chapter that had gone on too long. As time passed, I returned to my routine. I woke early to bake, studied in the evenings, and spent quiet afternoons on my porch sipping hot tea and watching the world go by. Walter had retired, but he still stopped by once a month with cookies and his warm smile. "This house smells like victory," he liked to joke. I also started hosting weekend baking classes for kids in the neighborhood. Something I never thought I'd do. Every time I saw their tiny hands kneading dough and giggling, I remembered the days I wished someone had taught me how not to burn the tart crust. Now I was that person, the one I had needed while cleaning up after classes. One day, a curly-haired little girl walked up to me and asked Miss Nora, "Does your family like your baking?" I paused, then smiled. "Not really," I said, "but now I have a different kind of family, one that knows how to love, the right kind of family." I used to think family was something fixed, unchangeable, but I've come to learn family isn't who shares your blood. It's who doesn't abandon you in the cold, who doesn't steal your chance to live and call it sacrifice. Family is who stays when everyone else walks away. And now, I am exactly where I'm meant to be. In the end, I truly lived. My story isn't just about surviving abandonment. It's proof that pain isn't the ending. I learned to rise from nothing, build my life with my own hands, and redefine what family means. Blood doesn't guarantee love, and sometimes to live fully, you have to let go of the most toxic ties. I'm no longer the girl left behind. I'm the one writing a brand new chapter for herself. What do you think about Nora's decision? Would you have done the same in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful real-life stories about family and resilience.